Today we're diving into a whole new world with Ali Hazelwood's audiobook summary of Mayte. And to really set the stage for this deep dive into destiny and duty, I just have to start with this magnificent sentence that really summarizes Serena's deep love and sense of sacrifice for her beloved. And while I'm willing to resign myself to an existence without the person I love, I refuse to condemn you to it. Yes, we're back with another audio summary of a terrific book on our Daily Books channel.
Wow, yeah, that quote, it really just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? That whole conflict between sacrificial love and fated duty. So, Mate, it's the highly anticipated 2025 paranormal romance novel, a companion to Hazelwood's 2024 bestseller, Bride. And what we're doing here really is looking at how this New York Times bestselling author, who, is mostly known for her STEMinist contemporary romances.
Right, the science-focused ones, the love hypothesis, that kind of thing.
Exactly. How she completely shifts gears. I mean, she's going from, like, lab coats and grad students to, well, literal alphas and werewolves. It's quite a jump.
It's a huge tonal shift, yeah. Moving from, smart people sparring in labs to these really primal fated bonds in a frankly dangerous world.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to kind of unpack how Hazelwood takes those signature themes, autonomy, her characteristic wit, that intense chemistry, and applies them to a shifter romance. One defined by, absolute alpha dominance. We want to figure out that central dilemma. Survival, political intrigue, and can you actually choose love when destiny seems to have already claimed you?
Precisely. Because this isn't just, another werewolf story. It's really a deep dive into power dynamics, political necessity, all happening in this world with wares, vampires, and humans.
Okay, so let's start with the setup. The heroine, Serena Paris. She's the world's first known human-were hybrid. Now that sounds like it should be a good thing, right? A bridge between species.
You'd think so, but nope. It's actually a nightmare for her. She was supposed to be this symbol of peace, the living connection between the wares, vampires, and humans. But instead, she's orphaned, she has no pack, and yeah, there's a massive bounty on her head. Her very existence kind of messes up the established order, which makes her a target for anyone who wants the conflict to keep going.
So she needs serious protection, like absolute protection. And that's where the hero comes in, Kuhn Alexander. He's the powerful alpha of the Northwest Pack. And the only way she can possibly be safe is, he claims her as his mate.
And Kuhn's protection is made clear immediately. It's absolute. The synopsis basically says only a fool would threaten his mate. So the core conflict sets up right away. You've got Serena, who's wary, right? She doesn't want to be just a pawn or a political tool.
Understandably.
Yeah. And she ends up needing refuge with this alpha whose very nature, his title, implies, total authority over her.
And this dynamic, this tension, it gets really interesting. Like right away in chapter 1, Hazelwood doesn't waste any time. Serena has this high-stakes encounter in a forest.
Oh, yeah.
She's cornered by a vampire who's definitely planning on collecting that bounty, maybe worse.
And then Kuhn arrives. But it's not the typical, swooping in hero moment. He interrupts the vampire mid-threat with this just chillingly detached question. He says, "Can you, though? Can you really, buddy?"
Right. It's so disarming.
Totally. It instantly tells you, okay, this alpha is operating on a whole different level of power. The villain doesn't even grasp it.
And Kuhn, he deliberately makes it confusing for Serena, too, doesn't he? He almost seems to, play along with the vampire for a second.
He does. It's unsettling. He leans into the danger, lets the bad guy think maybe they're gonna, share her. He even turns to Serena right in front of the vampire and asks her, "Would you, Serena? Enjoy it."
Which is just, wow, it's a total mind game. It throws the enemy off, but it must really test Serena's trust in that moment.
Oh, it tests the reader's trust, too. You're sitting there thinking, wait, is this guy actually a threat to her? Is he just playing some dominance game, or is this protection? But then comes the payoff, that subtle signal. He softens his eyes just a bit and whispers the command, "Better make use of that rock in your hand."
Ah, okay. So it is about protection, but in a very complex way.
Exactly. That high-risk dynamic is set immediately. Kuhn protects, yeah, but he expects her to fight too. It's like this partnership hidden under all these layers of alpha dominance.
Okay, but that partnership, it hinges on him claiming her as his true mate. And this feels like the perfect place to pivot, because we really need to talk about the whole true mate bond trope in paranormal romance.
Absolutely. The mate bond is like the engine of PNR. It's powerful, but it's also the thing that gets criticized the most, right?
Yeah, because...
Well, traditionally, it's this preternatural compulsion, and sometimes, historically at least, it's been used to justify a male character basically steamrolling the female's protests. He claims destiny or instinct. It overrides her choice. It's a fantasy device, but one that can really undercut agency.
And romance fiction generally has had to grapple with this stuff for a long time. You know, those older historicals, the bodice rippers, often had aggressive heroes who eventually won over the heroine.
Yeah.
But things have changed massively, right? Reader demands, societal shifts, focus on female empowerment.
Huge changes. That's the essential context here. The market just doesn't accept those older, high-aggression dynamics in the same way anymore. So the big question became, did paranormal romance, because it has this supernatural out, become like a safe haven for those forced seduction tropes?
And what does the research actually show? Are modern PNR authors still relying on that?
Well, actually, no. The data, looking at bestsellers over like 2 decades, suggests the opposite. Authors are actively moving away from using the supernatural stuff to excuse sexual aggression, especially when you look at the first main sexual encounter.
So wait, you're saying even if the fated bond pulls them together, when it comes to the actual physical intimacy, modern authors are making sure consent and agency are respected?
That's what the research points to, yeah. The critical finding was that scenes involving what they called forced seduction during actual intercourse, they're now the least common way consent is handled in these best-selling books.
Least common? What's more common then?
Well, things like clear verbal consent. Even if it's not the majority, it's present. And significantly, there's a clear trend over the decades towards female-initiated sexual contact, even in those early encounters. The genre seems to be consciously shifting.
Okay, that definitely pushes back against the idea that PNR just uses the mate bond to erase choice in sex scenes. But I guess the question still lingers. Even if the act is consensual, if the bond itself is this overwhelming, fated thing, doesn't that initial claiming by a powerful alpha still kind of undercut the idea of free choice on an emotional level? Is that part of the fantasy readers are still drawn to?
And that, I think, is the really interesting tension Hazelwood plays with so well. She absolutely delivers that primal fantasy, the powerful alpha claiming his mate, that irresistible pull. But her heroines, like Serena, they're always smart, they're always fighting tooth and nail for their own self-determination.
Right.
The success, I think, is in balancing that fantasy of being, overwhelmingly desired with the modern, non-negotiable requirement that the heroine has to be empowered for the happy ending to work. Hazelwood gives you the brooding alpha, but she makes sure the heroine is still, as she put it, the killer with the rock in her hand.
That makes total sense for her brand, yeah.
Yeah.
She's known for writing these really addictive reads, and apparently Métis was just like that for a lot of people. Reviewers kept mentioning the chemistry, that spark between Kuhn and Serena, and how well she pulled off the grumpy alpha sunshine heroine dynamic. The banter, too sharp, witty, but also really angsty.
Oh, definitely. The character work, the relationship dynamic, that's the core strength. That's why people said they just, devoured this book in a day. But we do need to be frank about the criticisms, especially around the plot structure, because they were pretty widespread, even among fans, and they kind of highlight the challenge of juggling this high-tension romance with complex world building.
Okay, let's get into it. What were the big sticking points that readers had trouble with?
The biggest one, by far, seemed to revolve around the main conflict driver for most of the book.
Yeah.
This celibacy covenant, this rule forbidding alphas from having romantic bonds. It kept Serena and Cohn apart. It fueled all their tension to find their struggle for, I think the estimate was about 85% of the novel. Readers were really invested in seeing how they'd overcome this huge political obstacle.
Okay, sounds like a major plot point. So how did they resolve this complex, pact-defining, culturally ingrained rule?
And that's where people felt the structure really let them down. It was apparently solved almost instantly.
Yeah.
And basically off page.
Off page? Wait, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Kuhn just kind of walks back in near the end and more or less announces, oh yeah, I talked to the assembly and they agreed to get rid of the rule. Full stop.
Hold on. So this ancient, blinding covenant, the thing driving the plot for hundreds of pages, was just poof, gone. With a quick conversation that we don't even see. Like, oh, fixed it.
Pretty much. Readers use words like jarring, unearned, all that build-up, all that angst and struggle just dissipated because, well, it seemed like the author needed a fast track to the happy ending. It created this huge pacing problem where the plot suddenly felt really flimsy compared to the emotional weight.
Wow, okay. I could see why that would be frustrating. And that wasn't the only thing that felt like it was thrown in for drama and then kind of dropped, was it?
No, there were a few other big reveals that felt maybe unnecessary, or at least underdeveloped, like this shocking twist that Kuhn and Serena had actually met when they were children.
Huh?
Or even bigger, the discovery that their parents had, like, murdered each other.
Wait, their parents killed each other. That sounds like a massive obstacle, like Romeo and Juliet level backstory.
Exactly. It was presented as this huge, dramatic weight, this reason they should inherently distrust their connection. But then it was apparently resolved or just sort of set aside pretty quickly. It felt to many like just extra angst that the plot didn't really need or fully explore the consequences of.
Huh. And wasn't there a medical subplot that also got some criticism?
Yeah, that too. Serena starts having these really dangerous physical symptoms, and apparently multiple doctors just completely misdiagnose her. They somehow miss what turn out to be pretty obvious signs of a werewolf heat cycle, basically signaling she needs her mate.
Okay.
It felt to some readers like a really kind of clunky way to bring in the important theme of medical bias against women. You know, how women's symptoms are often dismissed.
Right, a very relevant issue.
Super relevant, but here it felt like it was used more as a convenient plot device to create danger, and then it was just brushed aside once the real supernatural cause needing her mate was revealed. So, important subject matter, maybe not handled with the depth it needed.
So putting it all together, it sounds like Métis is this fascinating case study. You have an author with a really compelling voice, amazing chemistry between the leads, and that's enough to carry the book for many readers, even over what sound like pretty significant structural weaknesses. The rushed plot resolutions, the dropped backstories, the slightly convenient medical drama. People love the core romance enough to forgive all that.
It seems so. They devoured it because the relationship worked so well for them, even if the surrounding world building or the plot mechanics felt a bit shaky under scrutiny. And I think it says a lot about what the modern paranormal romance audience really prioritizes, you know? They want that intense chemistry, they demand agency for the heroine, and they absolutely expect that guaranteed happily ever after.
And if you nail those core elements,
If you nail those, it seems readers are often willing to overlook structural issues that might completely sink a book in, say, a thriller or a literary fiction novel.
which leads us perfectly into our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Yeah, think about this. Given that the biggest, most defining trope of paranormal romance, that fated mate bond, is still so popular, but also constantly criticized for potentially overrating agency, what does the huge success of books like Métis, even with its plot issues, tell us about reader acceptance? Does that focus on the heroine ultimately finding empowerment, combined with the witty dialogue and that guaranteed happy ending, does that effectively compensate for any perceived plot holes or the predictability of the trope itself? Where's the balance for you?
Definitely something to think about. If you enjoyed this episode of our review of Ali Hazelwood's unique work, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Feel free to let us know which book you'd like to review next in the comments. See you next time for a book review. Stay with the book. Goodbye.